friends, I'm here to talk about your performance task that you were working on today in your My Book. So the first thing is it gives you a prompt here of what you're kind of writing about. So whenever you have a prompt for your writing, the first thing you want to do is be sure that you read it carefully. Make sure you're understanding what it's asking. And think to yourself, what is this prompt asking me to do? What am I supposed to write? And make sure that you understand it from the beginning. Make sure you know if you're supposed to write a narrative, or if you're supposed to write your opinion, or if you're supposed to write information and facts. So let's go ahead and read this together and figure it out together. The prompt: think about the stories you read in this module. Imagine that your class is writing a book of superhero adventures for the class library. Write a story that tells how Ulysses and Kitoto work together to solve a problem. Be sure to include details from Flora and Ulysses and Kitoto the Mighty. So let's break that down together. The first sentence tells me to think about stories that I've read. And these are all in your My Book, and those videos are still up for you to look at. The next sentence tells me that I have to write a story that describes how the characters Ulysses and Kitoto work together to solve a problem. So that tells me that I'm going to be using my imagination to make up events in the story. I'm not writing facts. I'm writing a narrative that is from my imagination. It's not a personal narrative, it's a made-up story. So the next sentence tells me to use details from the characters in these stories, Flora and Ulysses and Kitoto the Mighty. So I will use details about what the characters do and say to help my readers picture them in my story. Think of a problem and describe how the two characters work together to solve the problem by the end of the story. So here, that little line, I just want you to think how you could put that in your own words. I will write a story about, and you might put, about Ulysses and Kitoto working together. However you want to say that. And here, once you get started with your story, it gives you a little checklist, but we're not quite there yet. The next part you're going to want to do is your plan. So over here, there we go. Your topic. So once you kind of brainstorm a little bit about what you want to happen in your story, you can fill that in there. And it says Ulysses and Kitoto. You can think of details that you've already read about them that you can include in your story. Include details about what's going to happen, their traits, their actions, what are they like. And then you can draft your story. Think about the beginning, the middle, and the ending. Now, make sure there's this little checklist here. This is important. Make sure you've got an introduction. Now, just because you have a beginning does not mean you have an introduction. Think about the introduction video that I shared last week. How do you make it interesting for your reader? You want to hook them in there. It could be quotes, it could be action, how characters are reacting. Make it a good introduction for your beginning. Next, it presents a problem that the characters have to solve. So that's going to be what's here in the middle. Describe the problem the characters need to solve. Use text evidence to show how the characters' experiences help them solve the problem. So there should be things from both books, both stories, that tell about how Kitoto, the mouse, is solving a problem and working with Ulysses, the squirrel. Remember, he went through the vacuum and then he got very intelligent. Use word such as first, next, then, and finally to help show the order of events. So that way your reader's not getting all jumbled up and wondering what's happening. Use those transition words. First, then, after that, next, finally, and have a conclusion that wraps it all up. Don't just say the end. I don't want to see that. Think about how you can tell what your characters learned. Maybe you want your reader to learn a lesson in your story. Both of these stories had lessons in them for the readers. Flora and Ulysses was talking about friendship and caring for one another. Kyoto the Mighty said that anybody can be big and mighty, even the smallest little mouse. So think about what you want your readers to take away from your story. Have the characters share a message for readers to remember. And then after you get that, that's your draft. If you need more space, use some notebook paper, no big deal. Then you're going to revise and edit. There's a little checklist for you to use to make sure you have things in there that you need. And then finally, publish. You can either do this on notebook paper, like I said, or I've got a Google Doc on Canvas where you can share this. So that is what you're doing. You're taking what you know about both of these characters from the stories that we've been reading and writing your own story about how they come together and solve a problem. And I want you to teach us, your readers, a lesson through this. It could be about friendship, it could be about problem solving, never giving up, believing in yourself, any of those, or whatever else you can come up with. I want you to be creative with this, but I also want you to make sure you're including details from the stories, and I can't wait to read these.